Joy Mountford, everybody.
Hello, I come from a very different background, and that's mostly my history in Silicon Valley is to manage interface interaction groups. Started at Apple, Yahoo, most recently at Akamai. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges I've had recently with numbers, and I will bring it back to text. However, my job is basically this Dilbertian paradox here, which is to try and fight all those people that want to keep adding things. Because, of course, if something works in interface, nobody notices it. But if it doesn't work, it's really in your face and it's a real problem. So trying to work with engineers and saying less is more has been basically 20, 30 years of my life. And less is often not let's make it a cornucopia of multiple things, i.e. less media sometimes makes it more valuable. You're supposed to actually laugh at Gilbert, you know. But, you know, okay. I know, it's the truth. I mean, this is really true. So I was very excited to be asked to talk to such a range of people here about text. My life began at Apple trying to get QuickTime out the door. And obviously it was because we had text and we had numbers. And I thought, what the hell would you do with a computer doing that? We needed to have video, we needed to have other things. So nowadays we've moved to all media, I think, is unique and has its place, but the multimedia has taken over a lot. And I'm a little saddened by that because I think our children now are getting everything in multiple places, multiple times, in device after device, and there is no way that you can seemingly have a straightforward conversation or get them to just read a linear book. My child, I don't think has actually read a book. And I actually have employees that don't own a book, which doesn't mean that they don't read. It's just a very interesting paradox for me to talk to them because we're almost at a different point in the continuum of what we are used to. And because of that, I think the Internet of Everything is going to push them further and further to this edge of being multi-channeled, multimodal, multi-everything all the time. So I think there is a role for monomedia. And I think partly the schools have to address the power of each one of these media individually. I think we all know the power of text, images, sound, touch, smell, taste, but almost none of them are really addressed anymore as individual components in the experiential sense. I collect things like this, and I feel tragic that they may not exist anymore. You know, notebooks Victorian ladies wrote, and letters. I actually saved them. When you see Big Ben, you know what it sounds like. It's very interesting to me. This is an image, but it's also a picture. So these things like grass, you know how it feels. It is a picture, but it's also something that makes you feel something. So they come together and that adds some value. And they also give people a way of understanding things together. And I think that's the power of multimedia. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always have multimedia to get something across to people. And it does help children particularly engage and keep their attention. So I think multiculturally, it's also very compelling to have people have different experiential entrances to the media, not just one way. So my question is how do you get this across to the young people today? Because I think text is really dying. My child I had this morning just had my first meeting with the school to tell him he's ADD, just like everyone else, it seems like. So that was exciting for me, and the rate is going up 2% per year, and mostly in boys, and it's 23%, which is extraordinarily high. And that's why I'm worried about what's happening with text. So I'm going to show you some illustrations of things I've done at Akamai to use text in a more powerful way, I think. And it made people pay attention a bit more. And the reason I like text is, especially when you read a book, you can read fast, and you can also use your own imagination. But the fact of the matter is that an audio book doesn't really let you do that, although you can drive at the same time and cook or whatever. So I think people have sort of taken over and said, well, you know, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't read. They're alternate things and they both have values. I don't know why I put that slide there. It's probably out of place, but it's a very interesting thing that my son pointed this out to me, despite the fact he doesn't read, and that's on my street corner, and it had been there about 15 years before I noticed it. So he asked, "Mummy, what is a psychic cleaner?" You know. So he does read and he sees things, and also I read but didn't see it. I think that's an interesting point about habituation sometimes. I'm not going to talk about these things because we don't have time. Anyway, I'm going to go to the demos that I have here. So I was going to put audio on here. So I noticed that when I do user studies, we do lovely reports telling mostly engineers and marketing what the results are. And pretty much nobody reads them. But they check box, we've done a study. And that frustrates the heck out of me. I'm now going to try and play the audio here, right? So I took this one quote, it happens to be a guy from the DoD, which made it even more compelling because he's... I just turned it on, I thought. So I decided to record him and also animate the text at the same time.
Okay, I love that thing. I mean, I've been begging for that thing for years. Ideally, what we would like to have is the ability to have our own spiky globy thingy, but instead of the spikes of light shooting out of it that are their utilization of their individual servers, it would be the utilization of our individual sites.
So this was shown at a conference of about 2,000 people, and all of the engineers, I know you don't understand really what it's about, just laughed, and they thought, wow, this is fantastic, a real person talking about a real problem. If I had written that just in a linear piece of text, that would have made no impact on anyone. So here's an interesting notion of how to use text, and it really worked very well. How do I get rid of this sidebar? Oh, good. All right. So then I noticed we do annual, monthly, whatever reports. I don't think I noticed because I put various what do you call them, apps on the reading sites to find out if people read them. So all the engineers said, well, how many people click on it? Well, I also looked at how long they look at it after that. Well, they click, they never read it. So they click, open, close. So now I've got proof that no one reads the reports, which really irked everyone because we spend months writing reports. So then what I did and said was do these kind of things, Wordles, and put them on coffee mugs. So now we know what the company actually does, which is a real shock for them because they didn't actually know what we do, although they talk about it all the time. But then what I took one step further, I didn't do that music.
Text my wife, I'm going to be 30 minutes late.
I didn't do that.
Is it going to be chilly?
Maybe. Okay.
Where's that coming from?
The traffic.
So there's this one is an animation of customers and product managers talking about our products. And we put this in the lobby. And because it's moving, people actually pay attention because that's what gets their attention, to the words, the text. And what we did was obviously word counts, frequency counts, and increase the size of the word to represent how many times it's referenced. It turns out the executives are on the top, the product managers are on the bottom. We didn't embarrass them by telling them what they were. But people looked at it and they said, wow, this is what the company actually does. So here we have text animated to get people to look, and people now start understanding what the company does. So this was kind of exciting for me because people got a clue for the first time what we actually did. Then we took it one step further, and I don't really want the sound on this, so I'm going to turn that off, hopefully, because I hate this music. Yep. Right, done it. We took it one step further and now allowed it to be interactive where people can move around in the space. It's using a Connect here. And now they got engaged one step further, which made them pay even more attention to what the words were on the stage. So I think that one of the things that I've been trying to do is get people engaged in the media, engaged in the text, to pay enough attention that they actually get what people have been writing about and have fun with it. So I think we're moving text, as it were, to a media event, but still using the text to convey what the content is in it. And they really enjoy doing it, which was very, very powerful and compelling. And we do it monthly for all the news feeds that they have. So, yeah, we're going to finish. I'm just moving ahead here. Okay, so I was trying to find the conclusion slide.
Sure.
Anyway. So all media is unique, and I think it has a place in our world, but it's essential to engage people in some of these text events in a media way, to not throw away text, but to engage them. I think interactively is a way that we can do that, and we have to give the notion that the young people have to have it in more than just a linear fashion is a very powerful thing to address here. So I've tried very hard to not throw text out, but actually engage it in the tools that we have today. Thank you for listening.
Questions, comments?
What is this best used for and less good used?
Well, I think you don't get a depth of understanding with this. And one hopes that it's a beginning to say, hey, this report has something in it. You might want to begin to look further into it. So in terms of steps of engagement, I think this is a beginning, and the interaction when you actually move with it gets you slightly deeper into it. But then the question is how do you go from that to saying, well, do you really want to start getting involved in understanding? And I'm not suggesting I've done that. But I've really found it difficult. For example, all of my students cannot write a paragraph. The hardest thing for them to do is write the paragraph to say what that was. And so this writing of the text has become a big stumbling block with all of my grad students. So I try to get people to get summary views, like Wordles are just incredibly difficult for them to, in the sense I want them to be Wordles when they write. They don't write anymore, typically, in summary write anymore. Yeah, sorry. I don't know your names. Oh, hello, Bill. That's what I do.
I was wondering, using the map, why you do not use interactivity on that, so that one can click on a word, regardless of its size, and pull up the text where it appeared, in all of the text that it appeared.
Right. So I think I've done other things a little bit more like that. I showed you some relatively superficial ones. Some of them are more complicated that I've done, so that you can actually engage like with a touch table and go deeper in 3D with it, so that you can hook, quote, with your finger hook, if you like, into it and travel in 3D. I agree with you, that's what we have done on other examples. But these are the ones that get people sort of in the lobby, that kind of thing, where you may be a visitor, like here, and say, what does the Gordon Moore Foundation do? Yeah, that sort of thing. So sorry if it wasn't as deep as you wanted. Any other? Howard, you must have something to say.
How do you get a machine to do
There's a
I'd love to just be able to use that.
Yeah. So actually, when we did it in the old days, we did it by hand. That's what you pay students to do. Go through the text and count. You can do things like word counting relatively easy, but you have to tune it because it doesn't just do it well. So there is now an application that's called, I think, Wordle, but you can probably look it up. Does anyone know the name? Because I've now found it, of course. Now it's actually out there, they'll do it for you. The other thing to point out is that Dragon Speech, although it's supposed to be trained to your voice, it's quite good to do speaking into it, and then you can use that as as a file that you can then use to put into Wordle. So you don't have to just use text. So it's been very good to find these tools are actually much better than I would have thought.
Thank you very much.